So I kind of forgot to film an intro for this, but here's some pictures of the car we're working on in this video before it was taken apart. This is going to be episode 1 of the 1UZ E36 build, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. Thanks. As you can see, this car has definitely seen better days. It's got a nice crumpling frame rail here. That one's tweaked. The one in the back is tweaked. I'm assuming all of this was tore up. That's why it has different doors and fenders on both sides. And it had a cracked windshield, which caused water to leak in, which destroyed the carpet. And when we pulled up the carpet, we found rust. That's a structure point for where the driver sits, and along with the passenger side. Passenger side is completely gone. And one thing led to another. The car has no floor, no motor, no windshield, no sunroof, no rear subframe anymore. This is just kind of sitting down here. He ended up stealing this one out of this car and put it into his other car, which soon he's going to be stealing this drivetrain and swapping it into his other car. So that leaves us with a broken, bent-up chassis. It's supposed to be kind of a budget rebuild. It's going to have a simplified wiring harness, just like my car does. It's going to clean up a lot of this mess. But that's not the only thing that's going to be different about this car. We are actually ditching the BMW motor that's in it. Obviously, I said earlier that he's swapping this one into his other car. And we're going to be swapping a Lexus LS400 1UZ motor into this. And we're going to be running a W58 transmission off of a naturally aspirated Mark III Supra, I believe is what that came off of. Either that or a W55, whichever we can find. W58 would be ideal. But I believe we're going to be trying to find a 92 rotating assembly and swap that into a 98 motor. Just because the 92 had the forged internals and the 98 had VVTi, which obviously we want both. But in today's video, we're going to be pulling out most of this wiring, sorting through it, and seeing what we can use for the new harness. I built my entire harness minus one relay out of my old harness. So my old harness for my car, it's all in this box. This is every wire that I cut out of the car that I didn't need, minus what I used again back in it. It's quite a bit, but there are a lot of things in these cars that obviously if it doesn't have an interior, it doesn't have, like ashtray lights and cigarette lighters and just about every door and speakers everywhere, you know, the whole 9 yards. But let's get into it. One perk about working on this car with not having floors, I don't have to like squat down on the floor. I can kind of just sit down and chill out. As you can see, this is not how the wiring was. We have dug into this a little bit. The original plan with this car was to reseal the motor that's in it and swap a new clutch in it, do a glove box or a fuse box relocation in the glove box. So these are some of the wires that we soldered in that we lengthened from the X20 plug and run over to here. And you can see all the heat shrink from where we soldered and whatnot. And we got a good way through. We only had a few more wires to actually do. And then we just kind of got overwhelmed with the project and let it sit on the shelf for a while. But today we're getting a start at it, so we can go over what some of this stuff is and how we're going to use it in the new application. So if you're rebuilding this for a stock harness, the main wires you're going to want to look for is this black plug off of the ignition tumbler. So it'll be this solid, I believe that's a 10 gauge green wire, 10 gauge red wire, 10 gauge purple wire, and a 10 gauge black and yellow wire. There's also a purple and should be a purple green wire in here somewhere as well. That's for the fuel pump. But those are the wires that you'll need to run to a switch panel. Those are all the wires that run to my switch panel. But another thing you want to look for when you're pulling it all apart, you want to save this brake pedal sensor, or plug at least. I'm not running this one, this white one. I'm running just the black one with 2 wires out of it, and mine works fine. And other than that, most of this can come out of the car, and then we can start rewiring it from there. Another thing you want to look for when you're pulling this apart is this group of wires coming out of the firewall. These are for your windshield wipers. You'll be able to wire them. You can do it to multiple speeds if you want. That's what these different wires are for. Or you can just run power to 2 of them. I have to check on my car to see which ones you need. but I just have mine on the highest setting. You don't want to snip this all the way back, because then you'll be kind of SOL. You might be able to repin it somehow, but that's another thing that I would save. I normally just follow it back as far as I can and then trim it and then just kind of tuck it up out of the way for now. We'll deal with it later. So I remember seeing this, pulling it apart. This is the other end of these wires. These are the ones you're going to need to start the stock motor. This is all you need. Basically, the green is power to ignition, the red is constant power, the purple is ignition power, so this will like turn on your cluster and whatnot, and this black yellow is your starter. The fuel pump, I'm assuming, is triggered off of this purple wire in OBD2 cars, or it's something actually triggered by the ECU. It's a little bit different, but you can do this simplified harness with OBD1 or OBD2. OBD1, I know for a fact it works with the 413 red top ECU, but basically any non-EWS car, it'll work right off the get-go. Now, if you have the EWS module, all you have to do is send your ECU out to get tuned, and basically just to delete it. One thing that I remember seeing when we pulled it apart was the back side of this plug. If you take a look at the ignition wire, it's all melted, which could have caused an electrical fire. Luckily, that didn't happen, but you'll also notice that on the back of this plug, your starter wire, so it's the second pin next to the green wire, it's black yellow here, ignition wire, then you have black green. So just be careful for things like that. Try to, orientate yourself with everything before you unplug stuff. But obviously we're gonna have to depin this, because I'm gonna try to reuse this connector. I'm gonna have to depin this old ignition wire. You should be able to just loosen these guys, pull them out, and this whole thing will drop, and then you can pull the rest of the wiring out after you get this out. There's actually two 8mm bolts that come off. They're a lot easier to get off if you have some extensions for your 1/4 inch. I would definitely recommend using a 1/4 inch just because it's a very tight space. The 10 I pulled off earlier, you can drop it that way. You have to pull off that 10, and then I believe this guy, which is most likely a 13 or a 14, and then this bracket will come off, and then this will drop, and then you can just pull off these 8mm that I just did to disconnect this from that bracket, and then you're all set. So when you're pulling the harness out, you want to try not to cut as many wires as you can. Try to unbolt everything. The only thing that I've cut so far is these two little wires, which I'm not sure what they actually do. That might be a OBD2 thing. I didn't have these in my car. And the wiper wires. Those are the only things that I've cut to get to this point where everything is just about disconnected. The only thing that's left is the wires that run into the door, which if you're running Windows, you want to keep the one with the plug with 2 wires. These are the only 2 wires you need for this regulator to work. But as you can see, we already cut the driver's side harness. So that's how long we left it on that side. If you can, leave it longer. In case you need to get to any of those wires. I just went through soldering some of those on my car, and it's not fun, but it's doable. I'm gonna cut it somewhere like down here. That way I have plenty of extra wire length. If I need to solder something, I can pull it out and I can solder it here rather than laying down in the car and trying to solder back there. Some of these connectors don't all disconnect the same way. Like you can see, this one is not the same as, for say, this one. This one has the standard, 2 tabs, push and wiggle, pull back. This one does not have those tabs. However, it has this little guy here. And you'll notice in these holes, when you pull on this, it slides through a groove. It's kind of hard to do one-handed, but basically, you just pull this out and the whole thing comes apart. So you just pull this out and it all just slides apart. So this is as far as you can get with only cutting a few wires. So the ones that I cut were these windshield wiper wires. These are going to be resoldered and pinned later. But for now, I just have them tucked out of the way. I cut both of these door harnesses. Where is it? These guys. On both sides. And I cut these 2 wires, and I had to cut the power lock feature for the doors, which we're not gonna be running that. We're just gonna be doing manual locks, which the car already has. So that's more than fine. And this we will get to later. Once you get the harness all laid out on the ground like that, you're gonna wanna find this harness and dig as much of it up as you can, because you're gonna wanna reuse a lot of these wires. A lot of these are just duplicates for things that you don't have anymore, but you'll be able to use these to wire in things like your taillights, your brake lights, your turn signals, and even speakers if you wanna wire them in the trunk. So once you get it to about this state where you have this wiring harness that runs down the driver's side all the way to the trunk, you wanna have this long. That way you can reuse this to run up and tuck over into where your fuse box is going to be. Or if you mount it over here, wherever you're going to have it mounted, you want to try to keep these long enough. If not, you just have to extend these. But the only reason I don't like doing that, especially with reusing wiring, is because you normally can't find the right color. We're going to clean this up, start pulling the sound deadening out. Just a quick update. While I was pulling the sound deadening out of the front here, I found out there's a lot more rust than I thought there was. I actually didn't notice that hole up there, so we're probably going to end up having to cut this whole section out and weld in a plate all the way through here, but no big deal. It's just a little bit more welding and some seam sealer. So I got a good bit of the sound deadening out.
Oh, Thomas with that good suck. Oh, yeah. Oh!
Got most of the front half out. Right over here we were grinding away all the residue from it. Most of the residue is coming up pretty easily with the flap disc, which is nice. Hopefully I can get this prepped for primer tonight. And if not, we'll just hit it back tomorrow. Well, I think this is where I'm going to leave it off for this video. Got a lot of progress done. Got the wiring harness pulled out, got the sound deadening out of it, at least most of it. And got the floor pretty much cleared of its residue. Still got to get rid of all the rust and whatnot over there, but I just got hit with like my 3rd spark to my left eye, so, and I am wearing safety glasses. It makes such a mess and everything just ricochets off everything. I kind of need like a face shield. I think before I do a whole lot more grinding towards like this area, we're going to drop the fuel tank to be able to weld the floor there. That way we don't explode. But hopefully by the end of the next video, it'll be primered up and all smooth, like all these little nubs cut off and whatnot, because we don't need them anymore. They just hold that plastic trim piece that just kind of evens this out, which we might even be welding in a plate to have that even in the first place. Either that or just down the road we'll put like a pedal box in there or something. But yeah, that's the progress we made so far. And we probably, not sure, we might start actually building the harness next episode. This episode we kind of just pulled it out. But I will be making a video on how to actually turn this into a harness that'll run one of these motors for sure. And when we get the 1UZ for this thing, I'll be doing an update to that or just putting in the next video how we got the 1UZ to run. But I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. We made a lot of progress on the car today, just with what we can do. Obviously, we're still waiting on a bunch of parts. We're just getting the chassis prepped, ready for what's to come. I'm trying to have this whole thing prepped and ready and have the whole chassis harness work by the time we get the motor. That way, once we get the motor, we can just worry about, getting it started and maybe even resealing it depending on the state of the motor, mileage and whatnot. Yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.